So we'll do the intro. And I'll throw to you.
Yep.
And then we'll get the breatho out and do the breath test.
That's why I got to lift in.
Welcome to Crim City. I'm Josh Hanrahan.
I'm Mark Morrie.
Moz.
Yes.
Didn't think you were going to be here today for two reasons.
Yes.
The first is that it was your birthday over the weekend.
Yeah, it was all weekend.
Did you drive to work today?
No, my wife had to drive me because I was a little bit worried maybe that I'd still be over the limit. But anyway, my mum will be listening to this. The other reason was I got subpoenaed, basically because I said no when a lawyer had asked me. He wanted me to be an expert witness it's a kidnapping case, and his client, from what I can gather, was helping transfer money after a guy had been kidnapped. And he's asked me to be an expert because it involves the Hamsies.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we're fighting that subpoena. It doesn't look like they're going to go ahead because we're going to take our barrister and they're going to have extra costs if they have to do that. And so the problem was I might have to give up my sources. I might be asked. And I really didn't want to give you up. But I would have had to because it would have been. No, so yeah, seriously, that was on the cards, but it looks like we've averted that by threatening they'd have to pay barrister costs.
So how did that come about? Just phone
Just
call?
randomly. It was an email from a lawyer.
Yep.
I don't want to say too much about the case because it's ongoing.
So I was actually looking at it this morning. We did our last podcast of last series on late June.
Yep.
And just a couple of days later, there was what I would say is arguably the biggest murder of Sydney's underworld war to this point. And that was Alan Moradian at Bondi Junction.
Oh, yes. It was so close. That was handy. I actually went to a crime scene because it was in the eastern suburbs. You know, I don't do the west very well. That's your job. But yeah, it was very, very big. The Versace gangster, kind of. He had gold teeth. I mean, he was your typical, like he ticked all the boxes, didn't he? Like,
Yeah,
Dudley
absolutely.
Sign. He loved his Versace. As I said, he had gold teeth. And he was shot in an underground car park at Bondi Junction.
So,
And that's when Sydney all of a sudden gets really worried because, gee, it's coming to Sydney. It's in the eastern suburbs.
we'll come to that. We'll come
Postcode
to
snobbery when it comes to murder.
yeah, absolute postcode snobbery. Alan Moradian is a name we both knew.
Yes.
It's a name a lot of people in Sydney's underworld knew. Maybe if you've been reading our stuff or listening to it, you may not have been aware of him, and there's probably a reason for that. He's a pretty big deal. And
he's probably one of the top 4 people in Sydney at the time. Like, for his stature in the criminal world, the amount of gear he was moving, suppose part of the commission that we refer to with the Comanchero, a very, very big deal. So we knew him. We didn't write for illegal, and I thought I asked, you're probably too scared to write about him. I wanted to put his name in a few times. But
Did you?
no.
Oh. Well, there was the most recent time he popped up before he was killed was the shooting of Marvin Araya, who was this,
That's right,
this young guy who we didn't know much about. He was a kid from the western suburbs, used to be a hairdresser, had been involved in the drug game, and then all of a sudden, as he pulled into his family home where he lived with his parents, as you know, him and his girlfriend in the car, these gunmen jumped out of their car, came up and shot him multiple times in the head in his driveway. And it was a bit of a shock because it was, you then had the burnt out cars, you had everything.
He had all those trademark,
the
we see.
hallmarks of an execution, but this was a kid who no one knew anything
I
about.
don't think he even had no record.
Very minimal.
I think he might have like traffic offences.
Yeah, it was. And then so we begin asking questions, talking to cops, crooks,
Yeah,
whoever
that's
it may be. And one of our sources said, yeah, look, we don't know much about him, but there is some suggestion that he was hanging out with Alan Moradian in the months before he was killed. And so we wrote a story saying that he was hanging out with a high-profile Comanchero. We didn't name Alan Moradian, partly because I guess we didn't really want people to think that it was a direct, we were saying in any way that he was involved in his death, because we didn't know anything to that end.
And then 3 weeks later, Moradian's hit. I think, I'm not sure if I got a phone call, somebody telling me who it was. And that was a big deal. Because I was trying to figure out who's been shot here at Bondi
Junction. Yeah.
You know, it's not a normal hangout. And then we find out that it actually wasn't Moradian's normal hangout. He'd been moving and he was hiding because he was worried that someone was out to get him. So that was those two murders. For a long time, people thought they may have been linked. Subsequently, a big name has been arrested over Moradian's death, who we can't report because it's been suppressed. So we can't name that person. But I think it's moved away from linking it to the young guy.
So when we talk about Alan Moradian being a big name, we should probably clarify that. He, as you said, Moz, you talked about his Versace. He's a very wealthy man. He had a house known as the Versace House, which
at Pennant Hill somewhere.
Yeah, out that way in the northwest, and that all stemmed from money that he'd made through a massive drug syndicate called the Golden Gun Syndicate, which was.
We love our little names for syndicates.
Yeah, we love our little nicknames. That one was called because.
But they were cocaine ring mainly. I don't know why they call them the Golden Gun Syndicate.
Because he bought so much money. He made so much money off the import that he bought a golden gun with it. So he loved a lavish life, but on top of his drug deals and whatnot, he was part of the Comanchero bikie gang, a very senior member, had some very powerful friends. In recent years, he'd also become a major force in the commission, which was
why that hit to take it. Like, that's enormous. He was a major player. You would have thought, everybody thought guys like him were protected, that no one would go after him. So anyway, he got killed, and I can't think of it because it was my birthday last night. Can you tell me what happened next? Not last night at birthday, the next murder.
Oh, right. I don't want to know what happened after your birthday.
I actually ended up poker machine room chatting to a guy who'd spent most of his life in jail.
Really?
Yeah, really interesting guy. And he really did, like some of the names he dropped, I knew he was the real deal. Like he was talking about people like the Darwiches who were, who had a great feud with the Razaks, and he met one of them in jail. And he mentioned a few other names of guys that made me realise he has spent some serious time inside. And he was telling me how he'd wasted his life. And I was thinking, I'm there playing the poker machines going, yeah.
I can relate.
Am I doing the same thing? Anyway, then the next murder, sorry.
Yeah, so Alan Moradian's death is massive. And as you say, the fact that it happened in Bondi Junction, only a few k's from the beach.
Do you know, there were people too scared to go to the Bondi shopping centre. My son's girlfriend, seriously, works in a shop up there, and she said for the next 2 days it was empty.
It was quiet.
It was quiet.
At Westfield?
At Westfield.
Wow.
Because, gee.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah, there's been a shooting just,
Anyway, that kicks off a bit of a run and the latest spike in Sydney's underworld war. So on July 7th...
And if only the barber, is this...
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. Good. I thought you were drunk.
What?
Now?
No.
No? Oh, no, okay.
I could be if I wanted to be, but we're not
So
allowed
nice.
to drink in here anymore. We used to. Changed so many rules. Work and occupational safety. What a load of shit. Anyway.
July 7, Friday afternoon, a gunman runs into a barber shop in
and opens fire.
In Marrickville.
Yep.
Trendy in a west suburb of Sydney.
Again. Yeah.
Busy road.
Yeah.
And just begins shooting.
Shooting.
And there's two brothers who are in his sights, the Ciali brothers, William and Eric.
With links to the bandits?
Yeah, supposedly some links to the Banditos maybe, but in any case, it's clearly an attempted assassination. You know, you've got two guys sitting there in chairs in a barbershop, a gunman comes in, balaclava,
close shave, because they both lived.
That's horrible.
I like that one.
That's terrible. And anyway, he runs off, burnt out cars everywhere as per the usual. And we all go, wow. Again, who are these guys?
And again, the ABC likes to cover, they got up in arms because it's Marrickville and Bondi Junction, and then seriously get invited on shows like the ABC, which you don't normally get invited on. When Southwest Sydney, they're shooting the shit out of each other.
Yeah, no one cares.
But it's Marrickville, it's Bondi Junction.
Remember the ABC interview you turned up to in a singlet thinking it was radio and it was actually TV?
It wasn't a singlet.
Oh.
But I did think I was going to do a radio interview, so I wasn't like elegantly dressed like I am now. And it turned out to be TV.
That's so good.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Anyway, then that goes by, a few weeks go by, and we head to Greenacre. And now this is where it really gets gets a bit crazy. So there's the first shooting on a Saturday night.
Oh, yeah.
In the industrial area, this little back street of Greenacre. 3 people are sitting in 2 separate cars. There's one guy...
Apart and totally unrelated.
Totally. There's one guy sitting in one car.
Yep.
And then there's a guy and a girl sitting in another car a few hundred metres up the road. And the guy and the girl hear gunshots from down the street, turn around, and there's been bullets fired into this car behind them. And then a car speeds by. And the gunman in that car stops, pulls up next to this guy and a girl who are just don't know what they're doing, but he shoots at them too. And so when we wake up the next morning, I remember I was working the Sunday and it was 3 people have been shot in Greenacre. And it took a bit to kind of get our head around what the scene looked like and how it had happened. And initially I thought, okay, they've run up to do a hit on the first guy and stray bullets have pierced the second car and hit one of these. I think it hit the girl in the back.
Yes.
And then it became clear, because of where the bullet holes were, that they were through the driver's side window, that no, this is 2 separate and intentional shootings.
But the police now think that couple were just...
Well, they definitely think that the first guy was the target.
Oh, because so many bullets, wasn't there?
Correct.
Right. And then the other people, maybe they were worried they were witnesses or they're just trying to scare them off. Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in any case...
It just shows you this cold-bloodedness, doesn't it?
It's crazy, really. Like, this innocent couple, young guy and girl, I think they were like 19 and 21 or something.
ABC didn't ring me up after the Greenacre shooting.
No. Did they ring you up after the second Greenacre shooting a few days later?
Ah, yes, they did, because it was a lawyer.
It was.
See the snobbery that goes with these shootings, isn't it? It's quite crazy. So you know quite a bit about this one with the lawyer who is shot just a couple of days later outside the front of his home. Didn't you get a call from a lawyer that was quite... He kind of almost gloated. They're after lawyers. Journos could be next.
Yeah, I did. So that was... I remember it was a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Mahmoud Abbas is a very well-known criminal lawyer.
High profile. He's got some big clients. He's looked after the Houchers. Like Bilal, one of the big names, who's now in Lebanon. So yeah, he was really well known, and that rattled a lot of people in this city, especially lawyers. Because
you've had, big name criminals. It's at a point at one stage where we're saying there's bounties out on these people's heads, and then
a lawyer
heaven forbid they're getting shot. It's to the point where the police can almost predict who's next.
Yeah.
And then you've got a couple of randoms. But Mahmoud Abbas was a big deal because of, as you say, he's standing in the...
Yeah. And the calibre of his clients in the criminal world.
Yeah. I knew him. Journos and lawyers spend a lot of time in court. You get to know them. Really nice guy.
I think he's currently overseas.
He's gone overseas. Well, it was a pretty serious shooting. He lost part of his kidney.
There's no really... all shootings are serious, aren't they?
That's probably a good point. Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Just thought I'd point that out. With my years of experience, I actually believe all shootings are serious. You might find some of them frivolous. But there's victims involved here.
Frivolous is a big word for you on this morning.
Can't spell it. That's why I like these podcasts. You don't have to spell check anything.
Anyway, it was crazy, and it really shocked. Yeah, you're right. Lawyers, we spoke to a few afterwards, and they were rattled. You could hear it in their voice.
Yeah. They don't kill lawyers.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a... There's the most famous one going way back was a law clerk called Brian Alexander back in the 80s. And there's a famous scene from Blue Murder where Nettie and a few police take him on a little boat trip.
Yes.
And they've got an old Kookaburra stove and they tie him to it, throw him over the edge. It's like really...
I don't know. It's great.
Well, it wasn't great if you're...
Not for the lawyer.
No. But so that was, he was... there was also a police prosecutor, Mel Spence, was stabbed by Abbo Henry. Mm-hmm. There was a solicitor in about 2000 who was shot dead in the inner city. I can't quite remember his name, but he was shot dead because over a business deal, guy owed money. So they're not immune to being attacked.
Now, it's not really clear what has happened.
There's a lot of rumour, no one knows.
No, there's a lot of rumour and speculation.
So then
none of it's proven true.
The task force then set up, wasn't there?
Yes, there was, but there was one more before that.
Yes.
And this is how crazy it was. So you had the Greenacre shooting on a Saturday. I mean, Sydney's still reeling from Alan Moradian getting shot, and then the Marrickville shooting. Going, wow, shootings don't happen in Bondi and Marrickville. And then you get the first Greenacre shooting. People go, oh yeah, that's.
Then you get a lawyer shot in broad daylight.
4 or 5 days later, and then the next, hours later, that night, early morning the next day, Ferenc Stemler, better known as David Stemler, I think that was his name. He's shot in a street in the middle of the night. He meets up with 2 blokes. He had a history of, drug possession charges and whatnot.
He had been questioned over the disappearance and eventually the finding of another drug dealer a year before.
Yeah.
Who was found killed. His body was found, I think, in bushland, northwest Sydney. He was an Asian guy who was dealing a lot of drugs, and last person to see him was the guy who ends up then being shot.
Stemler. Yeah. Stemler. So he's clearly got links to badness. That morning, that shooting was
big
crazy.
News.
It was big news.
Because that was the image, remember?
I do, yes.
Yeah, you do?
Yeah, I just love that it's all just coming back to you. Yeah.
And then there is the image. I don't know, for whatever reason, they've left the fucking body still in the street, 8 o'clock in the morning. This guy's been shot at 2.
2 in the morning.
And all these kids are on their way to school. What about, talk about street education? Dead body there going. And it was really, we ran the image. The editor said, look, we're going to do it. This is bringing it home.
Describe it.
Yeah, well, he's laying there on the road, in the street, dead, bloodied. He's been shot.
Yep.
And his body hasn't been covered up.
No, you've got 2 kids. If you can picture this body in the background of the shot, there's 2 kids in the what do you call it, the foreground? Yeah, you do. In the foreground of the shot, close by, looking in the direction of this body.
It's quite a graphic image, and we put it on the front page. We obviously put it on the internet, and it wasn't done like for clickbait.
No, it was done, and there was a headline with it, and I think our editor Ben English wrote a little piece saying we're showing, kind of explaining why we were showing the image. But that morning quickly turned from just covering another shooting to covering the police response, which was the creation of Task Force Magnus, because by this stage the cops had to do something, right?
They were very, yeah, that's right. You could imagine 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, the cops are going, shit, this is a 3rd, 4th shooting in a few days. We've got a lawyer shot. We've got fucking people shot at Greenacre.
Shot in a Greenacre.
We've got to do something.
Yeah.
And what do? They make a task force. They do that. They're very good at that. But having said that, that task force has had some really good success.
Well, it's been fantastic.
It has. But what it did also, what we found out, is that it's uncovered a new kind of gang.
It has.
The Outcasts.
Yeah.
Now, these were basically a prison gang that had always, they were from Goulburn, they were mainly kids from Mount Druitt who got together in jail, they were protecting each other, and had been around for quite a while. But this was the first time they actually were now operating outside. And they're nearly all recently released. And so, I mean, it's good for us that there's a new crew out there doing business, but it's not great for the criminal world, because these guys are heavy and they're all hardened crims. They're not scared to take the heavy lifting, and they're exactly like the KVT, which were doing all the really heavy lifting for the Almedines, the enforcing the kidnappings or carrying the guns. These guys are doing it, and again, they're working for the Cromos and other criminal groups, and they're just guns for hire, and they're quite a scary group we've got to watch out for, I think. Magnus has done a pretty good job. It's got a lot of people. It's locked up a few.
Did you think it would do this well?
No, I didn't.
It's been pretty
They're the hardest,
hasn't it?
I really feel that, like, underworld shootings, they're the hardest to solve. You know, they really, and especially now, they've got so sophisticated. They've got really good, as we said, we talk about the kill cars, how they have cars scattered around where they're going to use them in a hit. They've already got the petrol there, the jerry cans.
Yeah.
And they just, and they've got very good, they don't leave very much, any forensic evidence, No,
but what's changed is that, where once upon a time these cars were being stolen and police would kind of assume, okay, if you've stolen a Mercedes AMG from, Mossmen in the middle of the night, we expect that car to turn up in a hit. It happened with Gus and Moon, one of the AMGs.
That's right.
They said
9 months earlier they'd stolen the Mini, hadn't they?
The Mini Cooper, and the cops had put out a release saying, we're looking for this Mini Cooper.
We think it could be used They knew it was going to be used in a major
did.
crime. They
And
got
it
it
turned
right.
up.
It just
But-
didn't stop the crime.
No, but what's been so impressive about Task Force Magnus, as you said, is that not only are they able to identify the cars, they're finding them.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, they found more than 30 of these cars on the street
Yeah.
with jerry cans, balaclavas, guns in them, ready to use at any point if a certain
It's a scary number, isn't it?
pair of assassins get the
Yeah.
go-ahead to go and do a hit.
Yeah.
There's a car near you ready to go. You know,
That shows you the number of potential shootings or hits that they're planning. Mm-hmm. And it's just not. It won't stop. You know, as you said, this task force has done really well. It's locked up. It's identified the outcasts. It's got a few of the guys. There's been an arrest over the Moradian murder.
Yeah. When's the last fatal shooting we had? It must have been that.
Was it? There was also the murder, Danny the Serb, but that was unrelated.
Oh, that was
the last one.
That's a fascinating one. We might come to that another week. 'Cause
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in that one.
Yeah.
But there was one more shooting which was interesting, and it was that one in the underground car park of the apartment block with the
Campsie?
Yeah, the Hamsey associate.
Yes.
That was in about mid-September.
Again, underground car park.
Yeah, laying in wait, ready to, very much in the fashion.
You would think these guys would stop. Like, so many of them get hit. Well, in underground car parks.
Well, it's interesting because
Why
they
don't give up driving.
give up
Just
driving.
get Ubers.
That's
Because
probably,
they're always getting shot while they're getting in their cars.
yeah, but then they have to wait outside for an Uber.
Oh, okay. And then we might get Uber to go drivers getting accidentally shot too. That wouldn't be nice.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of tension out there on the streets. That's what we're saying, aren't we?
Yeah,
You've
totally.
got that shooting.
That one was interesting though, that Campsie one. The reason I just wanted to touch on that is because I gather that, well, the target of that, well, the bloke shot in that, whether he was the target or not, I think there was another guy with him, was Vailina Kolomatangi,
That's right.
who had been shot at before.
That's
Because, and I don't think he was the target of the other shooting, and it was a few years earlier, but he was with a school friend who had some links to the Hamsies somewhere.
and he was quite a well-known criminal himself. So that's right. This guy's a tough bugger. Mm-hmm. He's been shot twice and survived.
Yeah.
You know, so
But I was talking to somebody recently who told me that they reckon that might have been a bit of an internal feud. As one of my contacts was saying the other day, that if they're going
These
to
two go
internally,
yeah.
we might have something else.
another
in the street.
new war between another two different crime groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's police seem to have got a lid on the Hamsey Alameddine thing. Mm-hmm. So now we've got these outcasts, and now, as you say, it looks like another feud, like between two very, very violent groups who just, don't think twice about killing.
Yeah. Anyway, we might come to that in later
Yeah,
episodes.
and next week we'll figure out something else to talk about.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Turn up sober. That'd be.
I wasn't on that. I'm
Actually, no,
sober.
that'd be boring.
I'm sober nearly every day I turn up to work, nearly.
Nearly. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I know,
See, my
I like
mum's listening to this.
All right.
Anyway.
Well, thanks for listening. I'm Josh Hanrahan.
I'm Mark Murray. This has been Crim City.
It has, with the wonderful team behind it of Dan Box, Jasper Leake, and Nina Young. We'll see you next week.
Yes.